Yeah. So usually at this point in our discussions, we talk about maybe what we'd like to see next from Headphone Dust. And I mean, yeah, obviously To the Bone
Mm.
would be great. As
My
Jonathan, you and I,
my favorite Steven Wilson album.
yeah, and we had kind of talked about that on our spring announcement video that we just did. The To the Bone surround mix is maybe my least favorite of his solo albums. It's very heavy handed and compressed sounding to me, and it kind of stands out from his other work. So I think that one could be a huge leap in terms of an Atmos upgrade.
It's interesting to me that you said you thought Hand Cannot Erase had like an 80s vibe. I thought To the Bone was like the 80s throwback album.
Even more so.
Yeah. And
What,
the Future Bites too also has a lot of 80s elements. Yeah.
yeah, when I'm talking about Hand Cannot Erase being 80s sounding, I'm talking very minute detail. I'm talking about like Marco's snare being a little bit gated at times or something like that. This is really close, intense listening because,
Mm.
as I said earlier, like the original Hand Cannot Erase Blu-ray, I think is still one of the best surround mixes ever. I mean, 11 years later, it still sounds terrific, and it's probably going to be good enough for most people, really. But I do think that the improvement here it's noticeable. It's like a +1 or a +2, but it is noticeable.
Well, so to go back to your question of what would I like to see next, I'd like to see some stuff that's never been mixed in surround before.
Mm-hmm.
So as opposed to these things that are like upgrades of titles that were already released on Blu-ray, which are great. Don't get me wrong. I love listening in Atmos, but there are a number of sort of these extra songs from Steven's catalog that were recorded at the same time as some of these albums and maybe didn't make the cut. Like
Mm-hmm.
that 4.5 record was kind of made up of these leftover songs.
Yeah.
That could be one that could be done in Atmos. That would be cool. But there are also these extra songs that have only been released in stereo that are included usually in the deluxe editions. So like from To the Bone, there's a song called How Big the Space that I think had lyrics written by Andy Partridge. It's a good track. From the Future Bites, there's like a whole extra album of extra tracks. Some would say they're better than what's on the album. I know Mike is in that camp. But there are a lot of these extra songs, and it would be cool if those could be put together in some kind of compilation or something,
Yeah.
because they've never been heard in surround before, and they're really good.
I know.
So that's my vote.
4.5 expanded version. Let's give 4.5 the Living in the Past deluxe treatment.
Yeah. I already really love 4.5, so I'm glad you guys have brought that up. And to see it expanded would be killer.
Well, I will say this: 4.5 is the one Steven Wilson record I don't own, so that would probably be my choice for the next kind of Headphone Dust release, because I'm holding off on buying it because I'm thinking, well, if he's revisiting Hand Cannot Erase and The Raven, isn't it inevitable that at some point he might address that one? I will also bring up a couple of things I'd like to see, because obviously I caught these tours, The Raven Refused to Sing and Hand Cannot Erase, and there are songs and there are arrangements from those tours that are still yet to be released. One of them is the No Twilight / Remainder of the Black Dog encore that I got in Pittsburgh, and that's still one of my very favorite Steven live moments because it was heavy.
We should mention that there was no live Blu-ray from either the Raven or Hand tours.
Right. And the index from Hand Cannot Erase was evil. And I've loved that since 2015, and there's no official release of it. I mean, you can see it. There's the Yahoo concert, which I probably think I have somewhere. But it would be nice to see these solo tours get released, even if it's just audio only. But Steven's recorded them, so he's got to have them somewhere. And I don't know. Anything else on your guys' wish lists?
As far as Steven Wilson material is concerned, anything that hasn't yet received the Atmos treatment, I would be up for. But I would be at least as interested in some of the catalog work he's done for other groups. Like, I think it has been announced that he's going to put Atmos presentation of The Power and the Glory by Gentle Giant up on Headphone Dust. I just don't think it's happened yet. So if that is the harbinger of good things to come, that would be super exciting to me.
I mean, that's a whole other discussion, and it's a question as to what the labels will allow him to release. So I'm very interested in that as well. We could do a whole separate video of, what catalog mixes I'd like to see him do again in Atmos, because he's already done a lot of them, but there are some that maybe are not popular enough to warrant a physical release. Like I'm thinking of something like,
Caravan.
Spectral Mornings by Steve Hackett is another good example. If he can go back and do some of that stuff in Atmos, that would be really cool. But I think as far as like Steven Wilson material goes, he said that like 2011 is kind of the cutoff point as to where the session files are easily accessible for that stuff. So that doesn't really leave a ton of options. I think he will do To the Bone. I think he said as much that he would do it. Yeah. The live stuff I think is a good idea. But like then a lot of sort of his other projects, like the earlier albums, I would love In Absentia and Deadwing, but I don't think he can do them. I mean, I think he would have done Fear of a Blank Planet if it were possible. Like the early Blackfield records, I think would be cool. I think 1 and 2 never had a surround release, but the session files are probably not available for those. So I don't know, maybe, if this venture takes off and there's demand for this stuff, he'll be willing to sort of
dig a little deeper,
go through whatever difficulties there are in getting the multi-tracks available for that stuff. So
if my memory serves, he has said that it doesn't only come down to accessibility of session files, but that some of his earliest material just wasn't recorded in a way that can withstand the scrutiny of being unlayered in surround or immersive. So I think we have to accept that at a certain point too.
I think that was sort of in reference to a lot of like the 90s Porcupine Tree stuff, like those early records. And I think that stuff was probably recorded like on ADAT, like on some kind of digital tape. Yeah. But like I would say any of the ones that have been mixed in surround so far, like from I think Stupid Dream is the oldest one that had a surround mix from 1999. So like anything from that far back, I would think would sound good in surround if the elements are available for it.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing stopping him from doing new 5.1 mixes of some of those. Maybe not an Atmos mix, but
or just putting out the old 5.1 mixes. I mean, if you want the DVD of Stupid Dream, you got to go on eBay and probably pay a lot of money for it. And some of the 5.1 mixes of those albums were brickwalled. Certainly were. So if they could even put out like remastered or like flat transfer versions of those, that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And the other problem is I was able to find Stupid Dream and Light Bulb Sun and a few of those late 90s ones. And I didn't pay too much for them. But the problem I'm running into is that the DVD menus don't really cooperate with my 4K player. So they're kind of a hassle to play because the menus are kind of they're old. They're just kind of too old, and they'll crash often.
Sometimes when you load up some of those old DVD discs, like I was listening to Queen A Night at the Opera recently, like the 4:3 menus like really have not aged well. Like you can tell this was meant to be looked at like a CRT TV. Like that's how old some of these releases are. So yeah, I mean, my attitude is just to convert everything to FLAC and play those. But I know some people like their discs, so.